Loki Season 2 Episode 3 is out, and with it comes some very, very big implications of what is going to happen in the future of not only this season, but the MCU as a whole. We're going to break down this episode in full, and I'm going to give my thoughts on everything that I just witnessed because there is so much in this episode and there's so much we need to talk about. Before we get started, if you guys could leave a like on this video and hit that subscribe button and join us on the road to 1,000 subs, it would mean so much and I would really appreciate it. But with that stuff out of the way, let's talk about this episode because again, there is so much to break down. This episode opens up in Chicago, Illinois in 1868 as Miss Minutes and Ravonna Renslayer go to the past to deliver the TVA manual to a prior version of He Who Remains or Kang. They do this because this was He Who Remains' last-ditch effort to survive and sort of supplant his legacy after Loki, or I guess Sylvie, killed him. We see the return of Miss Minutes in this episode, and it's more than just a cameo. She is a main character. She's got some very creepy, very Ultron-esque qualities to her that we're going to get into later on. We see Renslayer drop the TVA manual through the window to the young version of Kang, and this allows him to become the inventor, the visionary that he will become later on in his life. Back at the TVA, OB, Loki, and Mobius are discussing why the temporal loom is about to completely just disintegrate everything, and they have to find Renslayer. They got a hit on the temp pad, so they go to the point where they thought that she would be. But when they get to Chicago, where Renslayer dropped off the TVA manual to the young version of Kang, she's not there anymore. She's actually 25 years in the future, so they jump times from that past in Chicago to the future 25 years later. They're at the Chicago Fair, a place during this time where inventors were showcasing many different things, and of course there is someone here that they need to meet. We get great moments between Loki and Mobius in this episode, and just the banter between them back and forth really cements their relationship as order and chaos. Again, a theme that we've noticed throughout not only this season but the prior season. Loki really embodies that chaos, and Mobius is a rule follower who embodies that order. They come across a few statues, and these statues are of the Norse gods, but Loki is absent. We see a statue of Odin, Thor, and Balder. Now, Balder is actually another son of Odin. He was rumored to be a member of the Illuminati in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, but he got cut. He was going to be played by Daniel Craig, supposedly, but they do show him here, so maybe there's some hope for the future that Balder, another Norse god, will show up. Balder is a character in Norse mythology who could not feel pain, and if you're familiar with the God of War games, you know Balder is a serious threat. They come across a poster advertising Victor Timely's astounding temporal marvels. Now, they agree that this possibly sounds like something that could link Kang to Ravonna Renslayer and Miss Minutes, so they check it out, and of course, she's there. Not only is Renslayer there, but we get an appearance of one of the Kang variants, Victor Timely. He's an inventor. He is the same person that Ravonna 25 years ago dropped off the TVA journal to, and now he's using it to his full advantage. We get an amazing performance by Jonathan Majors here. Again, every version of Kang that he plays, whether it be He Who Remains, Kang the Conqueror, or Victor Timely, they're all very, very different, but share the same core qualities, and this is definitely hinted at later on in the episode. Victor Timely is currently presenting a prototype version of the temporal loom that is completely running the TVA, and they need Victor Timely's help to go back to the TVA and fix it and make sure everything doesn't crash down. Meanwhile, Ravonna Renslayer and Miss Minutes want the same thing. They want to get He Who Remains or Kang to talk to him, but Loki and Mobius want a different thing than Ravonna and Miss Minutes do. We get the exact scene that we saw in the post-credits of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and afterwards, people are wanting to take Victor Timely's inventions and invest. We get a very ragtime movie sequence that felt really fun and very energetic and still very goofy, reminding me a lot of like Buster Keaton films and very old sort of cinema projects. The music really sold it for me. When they finally track down Victor Timely into the Ferris wheel, who pops up? None other than Sylvie. Remember, Sylvie knows who this man is. Victor Timely is another variant of Kang, and she had to kill He Who Remains to prevent all of the TVA from existing, but guess what? She is not changing at all. She still wants to kill this man, even though at this point in time, he has done nothing wrong. And Loki tries to convince Sylvie that she shouldn't do this, but it's very hard to reach to her. Nevertheless, Ravonna Renslayer and Victor Timely escape with Miss Minutes, and we have a very emotional sort of connection between Renslayer and Victor Timely. From the comics, we know Ravonna Renslayer is the love interest of Kang. And we also find out in this episode that Miss Minutes is an AI program, a very advanced program that was created by He Who Remains to sort of be a companion over the years and a helper. This episode lays the emotional seeds for Renslayer and Kang's relationship, a very tumultuous, a very volatile and sort of toxic relationship that will continue to be toxic in the future. They do love each other, but they're not willing to work together, and they're all very snaky towards each other. Except for Miss Minutes, because, well, she's just in love with Kang. She's in love with Victor Timely and all of his variants. Ravonna and Victor Timely share a very, very romantic boat ride with Miss Minutes, talking about his inventions, talking about the possibilities of his future and the man he will one day become. Only things change when Ravonna tells Victor Timely that they will rule together, because Victor, as he said previously in this episode, does not do partnerships. I love the little details we can see on both Victor's face and Miss Minutes, because they know that the person that they are can't really afford a partnership, and Renslayer is sort of still trying to weave her way into it. As we know, in the past, or I guess the future, or whenever you want to call it, Renslayer and Kang do not work together. She becomes the sort of leader figure of the TVA, but she is still alone at a lower level than He Who Remains. And I have a feeling that Ravonna just wants to fill this power vacuum and wants to be in a position of power. Why? Well, the end of the episode really hints towards something, but we're not there yet. Slow down. That being said, He Who Remains completely ditches Renslayer and goes off with Miss Minutes back to his original lab to gather his things so we can go back to the TVA. Now at this point, something extremely strange happened. Miss Minutes, being an AI who actually has a conscience, reveals herself to He Who Remains, or Kang, or Victor Timely, whoever you want to call this person, and sort of reveals her full intentions. She explains to Victor Timely that when He Who Remains created her, she was given everything except for a physical form. She has been the companion for He Who Remains for eons, but she could never actually be a love interest or a actual person to him. And that's all she's ever wanted. And when she reveals herself in a very Ultron, very creepy fashion and sort of becomes kind of aggressive, Victor Timely picks up the time pad and locks her up. A very creepy scene, a very revealing scene as to the backstory of Miss Minutes, and we're really laying the groundwork and sort of setting the breadcrumb trail, no pun intended, because they do mention breadcrumbs in this episode, for these characters in the MCU, for these characters' futures and pasts. Ravonna ends up actually catching up to Victor Timely and uses a prototype version of the pruning device that we've seen in the whole first season and in the second season against Kang, or again, Victor Timely. It's very cool seeing not only in the journal his prototypes for the things that we see in the future version of the TVA, but actually seeing his own invention being threatened to be used against him. Luckily, Loki and Mobius are there to stop Renslayer from doing this, and actually after this, Sylvie pops in to finish the job. While knocking out Renslayer, Sylvie and Loki have a heart-to-heart saying they've been in this situation before. Doesn't this feel familiar? We have Loki once again protecting this variant of Kang from Sylvie, even though Sylvie knows that this man is going to cause nothing but pain and loss in the future. Loki tells Sylvie that they need him to live in order to save the TVA, in order to save all of the timelines, including the branch that she wants to live on. Reluctantly, she agrees with Loki to take him back to the TVA to fix everything, and then she goes up to Renslayer, opens a time door using He Who Remains' temp pad, and kicks her through the door. Now, where does she arrive? None other than the Citadel at the end of time that we remember from the last episode of Loki Season 1. He Who Remains' lifeless body is still laying there, and Miss Minutes tells Ravonna Renslayer that there is a secret about her that she wants to tell her, but it will make her very, very angry. Now, what is this secret? My theory, personally, Ravonna Renslayer is going to be different than she was in the comics. Yes, she is a love interest, but we've seen variants love each other already with Loki and Sylvie. I believe that Ravonna Renslayer is actually a variant of Kang. Why do I think this? Well, she's constantly searching for that power. She's constantly wanting to be at the top of the food chain. And what do you know? When Victor Timely hears this from Ravonna, he completely stops it. Because remember, the multiversal war starts because all of the Kangs coming together could not work together, and they all thought they were better than one another. So this Renslayer wanting to be in this position of power is nothing new to a variant of Kang. This could be a stretch, but I do think it is possible, considering that Loki and Sylvie are very much one and the same but love each other, and I do think that Victor Timely, or He Who Remains, and Ravonna Renslayer could possibly be the same person. If not, I think that the truth that Miss Minutes was hiding from her is the fact that, well, she never gets to rule rule alongside Kang. And that would make her very angry because she always just wants that power once again. But at this point, the episode ends. I personally thought this was the best episode out of the first 3. It was very long. It felt like an actual movie watching it from beginning to end. There was so much exposition, yet there was still tons of action and tons of humor, actually. We got plenty of time with our characters, diving into the personalities more, and I am so excited to see what they do in the 4th episode. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think about the big secret that Miss Minutes is keeping from Ravonna Renslayer, and I also want to point out that Miss Minutes is a very terrifying Ultron-like character. Could we see Miss Minutes transform into an Ultron character, going from a conscious algorithm to a complete person? Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate every single one of you, and until next time, I will see you very soon.